much is an hour of your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the ability to focus your time on what you do best, not on tedious mailing and shipping tasks. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. More than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Go to Stamps.com/audio for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.
1/3 of all murder cases in America remain open.
He had told me that if I opened my eyes, he would slit my throat.
Each one is called a cold case.
The DNA evidence taken from the victim was a match. The Linden rapist was at it again.
Based on the hit A&E television program.
A phone call is placed, one that changes a family's life forever.
Cold Case Files, the podcast.
You could see the fire in his eyes. He screamed at me, "You want it? Get your tape recorder out."
Get new episodes of Cold Case Files every Tuesday on Podcast One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 277 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing fairly well.
Yeah.
I've had kind of a rough week. I detailed that out on Patreon. So, if anybody's interested in kind of the behind-the-scenes look at the life of Ferg, you can catch that on Patreon.
Did you say the life of Ferg?
Sure.
Is that like the life of Brian?
Kind of.
Okay.
Less funny, but yeah, very much like it.
Oh, you had a pretty funny weekend if you could be a fly on the wall.
That's true. That's true. I did. Speaking of Patreon, let's go ahead and give our shout outs. We had Aletta Cop.
Hey, Cop.
Jackie Fage.
What's going on, Phage?
Crystal.
Hey, good old Crystal.
Kimberly Federico.
Oh, that's fun to say. Federico.
It is. It's very fun when you add a R into it.
Oh, is that what?
It's not there. Renee Tucker.
What's going on, Renee?
Shelby Weiser jumped out at our highest level.
She's very smart. She's very wiser.
She is. Cristobal Hernandez.
Hey, Cristobal.
Martha Page.
What's up, Martha?
Kyle Blasberg.
Hey, Kyle.
Sarah Racine jumped out higher than our highest level.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Ashley Cruz.
Hey, how's it going, Ashley?
Jens Barte.
Ah, sounds like a fun place. Partay.
Angela Benson.
Hey, Angela.
Nikki Waller.
What's going on, Waller?
Rachel Hyinga.
Hey, Rachel.
Allison Adams.
Well, appreciate that, Allison.
Heather Galman.
Hey, Heather.
Angela Jaggers Claiborne.
What's up, Angela?
Louise Bretherton.
Hey, Louise.
Aya Gogol.
Well, there's Isla.
Lisa Hobson.
Hey, Lisa.
Sandy Blaisley.
Blaisley.
And last but not least, Michael Buchert.
Well, thanks, Michael.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Christine Vang.
Hey, Vang.
So it's a lot of great new support. We appreciate that and the continued support on Patreon. On PayPal, Sherry Bullock gave us a really big donation, and it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, appreciate that, Cheryl.
Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we have an episode out on Lionel Tate, convicted of murder and sentenced at the age of 14 to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Yeah, that's going to shock some people, I think.
I think a lot of facets of this case are going to shock people, but it's a good episode. Make sure you check that out. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We are talking about the death of Joshua Maddux. In May 2008, Joshua Maddux left his home to go for a walk, something he did often, but this time Josh never came home. 7 years later, his remains were found inside a chimney in an abandoned cabin in Woodland Park, Colorado, less than a mile from his house. After an investigation, Joshua's death was declared an accident, but based on strange evidence left behind at the cabin and the position of Josh's remains when they were found, many people believe that he was murdered.
Sounds intriguing already.
Well, we're going to get into all the interesting details. Joshua Vernon Maddux was born on March 9th, 1990. Most people knew him as Josh. Josh had two sisters, Ruth and Kate, and a brother named Zach. His parents eventually divorced. Josh lived with his father, Mike Maddux, and his sisters in Woodland Park, Colorado, a small town about 20 miles away from Colorado Springs. The family had already experienced a tragedy. By the time Josh went missing, on June 1st, 2006, Joshua's older brother, Zachary, ended his life at the age of 18 after battling severe depression. And it was said that Josh was significantly affected by the loss of his brother.
Yeah, how couldn't you be? That's tough.
In May 2008, Josh had recently turned 18. He was well-liked, got along with others, never really got into any serious type of trouble. Josh's sister, Kate, wrote an article for the News of Woodland Park on September 25th, 2015. In this article, she described her brother as highly intelligent, kind, and creative. Josh grew his hair out down to his shoulders. He was a musician. He loved playing the guitar and writing songs.
Hey, you used to love writing songs and playing the guitar.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wish I could grow my hair out down to my shoulders. Now I could, but it would just be the very back.
Oh, yeah. Business in the front, party in the back kind of a deal.
The problem is there's no business going on in the front anymore. That's the main problem.
Yeah.
Josh's family told the Denver Post that, he was a very happy person. He loved music. He loved the outdoors, but he was also a prankster. He would sometimes interrupt class president debates at school and declare himself a candidate. He once put on a robe and snuck onto the stage with the school choir while they were performing. So, kind of sounds like a class clown to me.
Right.
But it was said in pretty much everything I read that, he was very well liked by his classmates at school.
It's always good to be the funny guy.
Well, it's very good for making friends and kind of having people like you.
Right.
Teachers might not like you all that much, depending on what type of class clown you are.
Well, that's true.
If you're good natured, you're okay. But, if you cross the line and start ridiculing the teacher, or every joke is at a teacher's expense, okay, they may not like you that much, but the kids will love you. On May 8th, 2008, Josh left home to go for a walk. And we've already said this was normal behavior for him. This is something that he did often. He told his older sister, Kate, that he was leaving. She didn't think much of it because he often went on hikes alone. But Joshua's family became concerned when he didn't come back home that evening. And then they became distraught when multiple days passed and no one had heard from Josh.
I get it. He's 18, maybe he went somewhere with a friend, stayed the night. But when your kid doesn't come home, or your brother or sister or whatever, if they don't return home after a whole day, you're going to be concerned.
You're going to be concerned because I think you're expecting them to come home.
Right.
It wasn't like he said, hey, I'm going a few states over.
Exactly.
I'm just going on a hike.
Yeah.
To me, that's not, I'm planning to be gone for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I'll be home sometime today.
So when it turns into days, of course you're going to be distraught.
Yeah. On May 13th, Josh's dad, Mike Maddux, called the police and reported Josh missing. In an interview with Strange Outdoors, Mike said, I got up one morning and Josh was there. Then he just never came home. The next day, he still didn't come home. I called his friends. Nobody had seen him. Nobody knows where he is. So the first thing that kind of runs through my mind is this family is distraught after a couple of days, but 5 days went by.
Yeah.
Before a call was made to police to report Josh missing. I get it. He's 18 years old.
Sure.
To me, still 5 days seems like a long time. It's hard to second guess the family of someone who goes missing.
Right.
But I think a lot of people listening will say, or at least ask the question, does 5 days seem like a long time? And to me, it does.
I think so too. I think, 18 or not, when he's still living at home, it just seems like a extended period of time.
Yeah, and I'm not casting aspersions on the family at all. I'm just pointing out that to me, I'm thinking I probably would have made the call much sooner. But who knows? I wasn't there. I wasn't privy to every bit of information. The police and Josh's friends and family looked for him in their neighborhoods throughout the town. They searched for months and found nothing. It seemed as though Josh had disappeared into thin air and didn't leave any evidence behind. Now, his family said they weren't sure why he would have run away because he didn't have any specific reason to want to leave home. As far as they knew, he wasn't involved in criminal activity. He didn't have any enemies who would want to do him harm. And he wasn't in any type of financial trouble.
Well, he's only 18, so how much financial trouble can you be at the age of 18?
Depending on what you're into. But I get it. 18,
Yeah.
You're still kind of starting out. I think there was some hope on the part of the family that, maybe he had left town to pursue his music career, start a new life, and he would reach out to them soon. Because I think as a family, you got to try to figure out something to hang on to.
Sure.
Where are you going to find that hope?
I mean, they just went through a tragic experience 2 years prior. So I'm sure that they just want to have anything positive to hang their hat on.
Yeah, and you're going to try to find that. Now, according to the Denver Post, Kate said that since Josh was 18, it was reasonable to assume that he may have decided to leave town to start a new life. As one of his two older sisters, she said, "I have always chosen to believe that this was the case. I have expected Josh to return home to my father's house at any time with a wife and small children so that they can meet their grandparents and two aunts." Josh has always been known for his musical and literary talent, so maybe we would find him playing music with a band on tour or catch him writing successful novels under a pen name so that he could keep his preferred lifestyle of solitude in the woods. And to me, this goes back to exactly what I just said. As a family, you're trying to hold on to something.
Sure.
He's okay. He's out living his life. He chose to do this.
Yeah, he's taking his talents and...
Now, why has he not called us? I mean, all those questions I'm sure go through your mind,
Right.
But at the end of the day, you got to be hopeful about something.
Sure.
The police had no reason to suspect foul play was involved in Josh's disappearance. He was listed as a missing person for the next 7 years.
Each of those years had to be painful.
Extremely.
Yeah.
I wonder if each successive year is more painful than the last.
Yeah, why hasn't he returned home? Why haven't we received a call? Why haven't we received a letter? Anything, right?
Kate Maddux told the Denver Post Josh was a free spirit, and he always told us that he was going to have a great adventure, and he may not talk to us for a while. Now, when he said a while, we thought maybe a few years. So, they're hanging on to this hope, but it seems as though there had been some sort of precedent set by Josh that, maybe someday he's going to do this.
Right.
He's going to go off on this great adventure. So I think you can see why it was probably easy for them to think that this is maybe what he did.
Yeah, they're like, oh, okay, this must be that great adventure he talked about. And he did say we might not hear from him for a few years. Maybe a few, he meant 7. We don't know.
Yeah, it was almost like foreshadowing, or, he was forewarning them that, hey, at some point, I'm going to take off.
Right.
Because I'm longing for, some type of adventure.
We've all felt that, right? I know I have. Have you felt that? Longing for the adventure? You just wanted to go and do something.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you before. I've had this thought that it would be amazing to load up the Harley and just kind of go cross country, see how far I could drive in a day, find a little dinky motel to sleep in, get up the next morning and just ride.
Yeah.
And see how far I could make it and see the sights and do all that. I think that would have been pretty cool if I was 20. The problem is when I was 20, I couldn't afford a Harley. I had no money. when I got to the point in my life where I could afford a Harley, I had a wife, I had 2 girls, a mortgage payment, college on the horizon. So, it just didn't seem to line up to be the right time.
Almost sounds like the plot of Wild Hogs.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The problem is I don't have the rest of the Wild Hogs.
That's true.
I need, 3 or 4 other guys to form a group. If not, it's just one Wild Hog.
Yeah, Wild Hog.
It's just called Wild Hog.
And you're not going to do well against the El Diablos.
No, I'm not going to save the whole town by myself.
No, not at all.
According to the Strange Outdoors, Mike Maddux continued living in Woodland Park in case Joshua came home one day. Mike said, I buried his older brother 2 years before, and it was so difficult on Josh. When his brother died, it pushed him over the edge. It was a big shock for the family and a big shock for Josh. He thought highly of his older brother. Now, one thing that we hear time and time again is that the parents or parent of a missing child often do not want to leave the area, do not want to leave the house.
No.
They want to be there when their child returns.
Yeah, because what if he does?
Mike Maddux told the Washington Post for a long time, every time the phone would ring, I expected it to be the morgue or the police. Once they found a body in New Mexico and thought it might be him. He said, you just play a waiting game. You have an empty chair at the table and an empty place in your heart. Mike also told the Pikes Peak Courier, he was such a wonderful boy, the kindest, nicest, brightest boy. So, to me, there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. And I'm sure that exists in, a lot of these situations. Yeah. We talked about the hope.
Sure.
Okay. He's going to come back. He's on his great adventure. But then you have Mike talking about, well, every time the phone would ring. Okay. Is it going to be the morgue telling me that my son is dead? Is it going to be the police telling me that, or that he got in trouble? So you've got kind of a yin and a yang there.
Right.
On the one hand, a tremendous amount of hope. And on the other, it's like you're waiting for the bad news to come.
Yeah.
And that has to be extremely difficult. Years passed, and it seemed like the Maddux family would never get the answers that they needed. Then on the afternoon of August 7th, 2015, workers who had demolished an old cabin found human remains inside the stone chimney. The remains were found at the Wilderness Development in Woodland Park near Rampart Range in Kelly's Roads. The cabin was being torn down for future construction on the empty lot. The remains were found curled up into the fetal position in the lower part of the chimney. It looked like this person had been forced through the damper and into the smoke chamber above the firebox. And for those that don't know, chimney damper is kind of like a metal flap or some type of metal device that seals up the chimney to keep heat inside when there's no fire in the fireplace. You can't just have an open hole.
No.
Letting all your heat out. The smoke chamber is the part of the chimney right above the firebox that allows the smoke to enter the chimney and exit the house.
And I think many people that are listening have experienced the not opening the damper after you've lit some firewood on fire and you realize the house is smoky.
The whole place is filling up with smoke because there's nowhere for it to go.
Right.
Yeah, that's not one of those mistakes that you're not going to realize pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And the position of the body in the chimney was said to have been very unusual. The knees were above the head, and it was reported that the legs were dislodged from the body. One hand was raised to the face. The man in the chimney was only wearing a thermal shirt. He had no shoes, socks, or pants on. Now, sources are not specific on if the man was wearing underwear or not. Based on the condition of the remains, it was pretty easy for the authorities to determine that the man had been dead for at least several years. On September 28, 2015, Coroner Al Bourne of the Teller County Coroner's Office announced that the remains were identified as Joshua Vernon Maddux. The coroner's office used dental records, gender analysis, and a prior injury to identify Joshua. The tip of Josh's right index finger had been amputated after he had an accident with a bike chain.
So it took like 6 weeks to figure this out, but eventually they got there.
And it sounds like they had enough to go on. It's just probably comes down to workload and how long does it take to get all this stuff done. Now, Josh was found just a quarter mile from his family's house. On September 28th, the coroner declared Josh's death accidental. Al Bourne stated that Josh's position inside the chimney appeared to have been a voluntary act in order to gain access to the cabin. There was a wood-burning insert in the fireplace that made it impossible to get all the way through the chimney into the cabin. It was thought that Josh most likely got stuck and died inside the chimney.
So he's saying Josh got on top of the roof, somehow started climbing down the chimney like Santa Claus, and just couldn't go any further, but couldn't go back up either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
That'd be rough.
He also told the Denver Post that there were no signs of foul play. Bourne stated the hard tissue showed no signs of any trauma. There were no broken bones. There were no knife marks, no bullet holes. He said, there is so far no answers to a number of things. It's very confusing. It was not an instant death. How he died is only a matter of speculation. But we know he didn't starve to death because that takes many weeks. So then you go down the chain. You've got dehydration, which can take just a few days. And then the other thing would be hypothermia, which could occur in a day or two. Bourne said, we have no evidence to say which one came first. But he did say that the most likely cause of death was hypothermia. At the time Josh went missing, the low temperatures were all the way down in the 20s.
Regardless of how he died, think about how scary he had to feel. If what the coroner says happened, how scary would that be that you're trapped in that confined space, not able to move, not able to get out, knowing that it's just a matter of time, you're going to die.
Well, I've made it very clear. My fear of confined spaces is real. It's debilitating. And that's not a joke in any way. So that would be tough for me, just that.
Sure.
By itself. But to your point, to be in a position where you know you can't go down, you can't go up, and there's no food or water that's just going to magically appear. At a certain point, the panic sets in because, like you said, you know you're going to die.
Yeah.
Again, with the caveat, if it happened the way that the coroner speculates or believes that it happened. But with the temperatures in the 20s, that's cold.
It is.
I'm no expert, but my assumption is hypothermia would set in fairly quickly. It wasn't like he was wearing even a jacket. So,
yeah, I mean, a thermal shirt's just not going to do the job.
True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to Gibby and I talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now, getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, national annual average insurance savings by new customer surveyed, who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Some people might wonder about your mysterious disappearances. But if you're having as much fun with Best Fiends as I am, it's no secret why you sneak off to play. You know, sometimes I sneak down to the studio. Everybody in my family thinks I'm working on the podcast, and most of the time that is true. But sometimes I'm just playing Best Fiends. I love this game. You know, I passed level 350, so I've played it quite a bit. It's a very easy game to pick up and play however many levels you want at any time. And you know what never gets old to me is that feeling that you get when you beat a level. I love that. Best Fiends is a free to download mobile puzzle game with thousands of exciting levels for new adventures and challenges every time you play. I love the fact that they have so many different unique fiends to collect. Best Fiends has offline play, so you'll never be stranded without fun, even if you lose your internet connection. And they do a great job with coming up with new events and challenges all year round. Download your favorite getaway, Best Fiends, for free today on the App Store or Google Play. You'll even get $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's Friends Without the R, Best Fiends. I want to tell everybody about the maker of my new favorite suitcase, and that's Away. I've been using their carry-on size suitcase for a while now. I took it with me when we went to CrimeCon in Vegas, and it was perfect. And it even has a very cool charger that kind of slides into the suitcase. So, you know, if you're sitting around in an airport and you need to charge your phone or your iPad or whatever, it's right there. So no matter where you're going, you can rely on Away's range of travel products to solve real travel problems and get you out there. Away offers a range of suitcases, bags, and other travel essentials made of different materials, polycarbonate, aluminum, and they have a ton of variety of colors and sizes. These suitcases are built to last, made to withstand even the roughest of baggage handlers. You've got to try Away's products. Away offers free shipping and returns on any non-personalized order within the contiguous US, Canada, and the UK. Plus, there's a 100-day free trial on everything Away makes. Start your 100-day trial and shop the entire Away lineup of travel essentials, including their best-selling suitcases and bags at awaytravel.com/TCAT. That's awaytravel.com/TCAT, TCATT. Al Born ruled the death accidental by an unknown cause. He believes Joshua climbed into the chimney and got stuck. Josh was about 6 feet tall and 150 pounds. So, you know, as we've kind of laid it out, he may have died from exposure, dehydration, or starvation. They don't know. It had been 7 long years, but at that point, Josh's family finally knew where he was, but they still had to figure out how to answer the question of what happened to him and why. The Woodland Park police were working the case when Josh was a missing person, but it was transferred to the coroner's office after he was found. According to the Strange Outdoors, Kate Maddux said, "The situation doesn't make any sense at all. We were really expecting him to be anywhere else in the world, and he was actually very close. The only thing we can figure is he was being an 18-year-old kid, checking out a cabin. It had been abandoned for a long time, and a horrible accident happened."
As a family member, I'd be so upset that he was so close and we didn't even realize it.
Yeah, I get that. I think obviously you're upset that he's dead, but to your point, there has to be something that gnaws at you, thinking, right, we didn't know where he was. We were searching all over the place, and now we find out that he was not far away at all. Now, there's no way that they could have known he was inside that chimney, but you know, things like that don't stop that kind of gnawing feeling. I think that a lot of people have. Oh, if I could have only done this, or why didn't we check that cabin? It's not reasonable.
Right.
But stuff like that is going to enter people's minds. Many Woodland Park residents clearly remember when Joshua went missing. After his remains were found, rumors went wild that Josh was murdered and put into the chimney. I think the position of Josh's body and his lack of clothing made people hesitant to believe his death was an accident. We already mentioned he was only wearing a thermal shirt. What we haven't said is that the rest of his clothes were neatly stacked inside the cabin near the fireplace's hearth. Boots were also found by the fireplace.
So that's strange, right? If he was trying to break into the cabin, how did his clothes get inside the cabin?
Yeah, it kind of flies in the face a little bit of what the coroner speculated. If he was trying to break into the cabin, but was stopped at the bottom and couldn't make it in, to your point, how did his clothes get in there?
It just doesn't add up.
Doesn't seem to. The cabin's owner came forward to give his opinion on the case after Coroner Bourne's announcement. Chuck Murphy is the builder from Colorado Springs who owned the abandoned cabin. Murphy was the president of Murphy Constructors. We talked about it earlier. The cabin was being demolished for a new housing development in the city. The wilderness development consisted of 32 single-family lots for sale, and the cabin sat on one of those lots. According to the Gazette, Chuck Murphy's parents purchased the cabin on Rampart Range Road in the 1950s. The cabin was the homestead of the Thunderhead Ranch, where, according to the Gazette, illegal gambling and wild times once ran rampant. The cabin was used by visitors of Thunderhead Ranch for gambling. The Denver Post reported in 1950 that illegal casinos were running full blast in Woodland Park. Thunderhead Ranch was an infamous dining, drinking, and gambling complex owned by Big Bert Bergstrom in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. Bergstrom immigrated to the U.S. from Sweden in 1912. He started the Thunderhead Inn as an eating and drinking establishment after Prohibition. He used the ranch for illegal gambling and sex work. The FBI arrested Bergstrom, but a jury found him not guilty. So it's kind of some very interesting backstory.
Yeah, some history there. Gambling, drinking.
Sex work.
Yeah.
It was like a 1950s bunny ranch.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Chuck Murphy's brother lived in the cabin for 30 years until the early 2000s. It was then used as a rental cabin for a while before the family abandoned it. They used it for storage, and no one except an occasional burglar or animal ever entered it. Murphy told the Colorado Springs Gazette, occasionally we'd go in there to check on it, and there were mice, chipmunks, and raccoons. It smelled bad.
Well, with dead animals and probably animal feces, it probably did smell bad. But if it had a body in the chimney, it probably smelled bad for another reason.
Now, if Murphy hadn't decided to sell his land for this development, it could have been many more years before Josh was found. The cabin was just about 2 blocks or a quarter mile from Josh's family home. His family had never thought to check the abandoned cabin because there were no signs that anyone was living there. Chuck Murphy rarely went to the cabin.
Even if the family had gone and checked the cabin, they wouldn't have seen anything. Besides, maybe they would have identified his clothes by the fireplace hearth. Maybe they would have just peeked inside the windows and said, yep, it's abandoned. We don't see anything, and left it at that.
Murphy said that when they did go to check on it, they never noticed anything suspicious. He talked a lot about the bad smell. But again, he thought it was dead animals, like you said, feces. But he did tell the Denver Post that he noticed a rotten smell whenever he entered the cabin. He just couldn't identify what it was. He said the place was damp. It smelled like hell. There was raccoon poop all over the place. Murphy said he never had a reason to check the fireplace because the furniture was blocking it. And I think I'm getting a sense of why, maybe he only checked on the cabin periodically.
Right.
If the smells were really that bad, how often do you really want to go?
Not often.
The cabin was located in the middle of a large plot of land, about 50 feet from the road, and it was surrounded by tall trees. But since there were no other houses nearby, it's likely no one would have heard Josh calling out for help. Murphy was present when they found Josh's remains. He said that an earth mover pulled back the steel fireplace insert inside the chimney, and that's when they found the body. But according to the Denver Post, Murphy did not believe the coroner's determination because of the rebar installed on top of the chimney to prevent animals from getting inside. He said, there's no way that guy crawled inside that chimney with that steel webbing. He did not come down the chimney. Murphy stated that it was wrong to think that Josh took off his clothes and got inside the chimney because he most likely knew he would get stuck. And for me, Gibby, it's this, stack of clothes, right? Neatly folded that I'm struggling with the most. Number one, how did they get in there unless he was able to access the cabin? And if he was able to access the cabin, why would he need to be in the chimney at all? And if you're thinking about trying to climb down a chimney, this is my thought. To me, the last thing you would want to do is take off your clothes. It's not like you're trying to shimmy down memory foam.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about brick and jagged things that are going to possibly be touching some very important parts of the body.
Very important.
Some sensitive. Some you want to, try to watch out for.
For sure.
I'm just not getting it. It's not clicking in my mind.
And if the place is abandoned, and you can assume that maybe he knew that it was abandoned.
Would he not have maybe at least peeked into windows?
Right.
I would think somebody could pretty easily tell from the outside.
Yeah. And if he's been living up there all that time, maybe he knew that it's been abandoned for a while. So why go through the chimney? Why not find a different route to get in? And like you said, why are the clothes neatly stacked on the inside?
Yes, that's the part that for me, I'm having trouble coming to grips with.
Yeah. Like, let me take my clothes off. Now let me go back outside. I just want to see if I can go down this chimney and come in. I just want to see. Let me try that out.
Right, you and I talk about this all the time. What makes sense and what doesn't make sense, what's plausible, what's not plausible. And that's kind of where I'm at with that part of it. Murphy stated that the chimney was about 20 years old. During construction, they put wire mesh over the top to keep animals from getting in. He told the Pikes Peak Courier it was a heavy wire grate, a wire mesh. I installed it across the chimney, about one row of bricks from the top. We didn't want trouble with raccoons and things into the chimney. According to the Pikes Peak Courier, Al Bourne argued that the wire grate may have been rusted or corroded and said, nobody saw the metal mesh. We didn't see it in any of our photos. It may have disappeared. Murphy then responded that during the demolition process, they collected the metal, which is why it wasn't near the chimney or in the photos at the time. Murphy has stated that he believes that Josh was forced into the chimney from the inside.
Well, that sounds more plausible. If the chimney has a wire cap on it, he's not going to go through that way. And like Murphy said, the metal was outside on the ground when they did the demo. They know they have the metal mesh. So that's why the coroner didn't see it in any of the photos. But again, I just don't think a guy would take his clothes off, go back outside, and try to go through the top of the chimney. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Josh's family and Coroner Bourne responded to Murphy's statements. On October 1st, Coroner Al Bourne reopened the investigation after Chuck Murphy came forward with his information. After Murphy came forward, tips came in about individuals who may have bragged about killing Josh. So now this case is taking a turn, right? We have Murphy's information, which seems to kind of contradict a lot of what the coroner has theorized. Now we have people talking about individuals bragging about killing Josh. There were several reasons for Al Bourne reopening the investigation. The wire mesh on top of the chimney, that caused some doubt about his theory that Josh climbed in from the top. A large wooden breakfast bar was torn out of the wall and dragged over to block the chimney from inside the cabin. And apparently no one knew who did this or why. And we said Josh was found in a fetal position, knees above his head, disjointed from his torso. And Bourne had made a previous comment that he believed it would have taken two people to get Josh into such a position. So it sounds like at some point he contradicted himself. or contradicted his initial theory.
Yeah. Somehow sound like he feels like two people had to be on site to get Josh into the chimney. And then maybe those two individuals ripped the cabinet off the wall, put it up, braced it up against the fireplace so that if he did find a way to wiggle down and out and wouldn't be able to get out of the fireplace.
He'd be trapped.
Trapped, yes.
But here again, I struggle. I don't know the timing of everything, the timing of the theory versus this comment that he made, but they're definitely at odds with each other. If he believes that it took two people to get Josh in the position in which he was found, then to me, that's in direct conflict with his theory that Josh climbed down and got stuck. And another concerning question was why Josh's clothing had been removed. According to the Strange Outdoors, Bourne commented about the clothes. He said, "This one really taxed our brains. We found his clothing just outside the firebox. He only had on a thermal shirt. We don't know why he took his clothes off, took his shoes and socks off, and why he went outside, climbed on the roof, and went down the chimney. It was not linear thinking." And I would agree. It's not linear thinking, which to me is why it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it just doesn't add up.
So how are you coming to that conclusion when, kind of all the factors don't seem to support it? Is it because you don't have any evidence of other people being on scene? And so you're kind of defaulting to, well, we don't know that anybody else was there, so he must have climbed down himself.
The only way I can think something like that occurred is if he was there with some buddies. Maybe they dared him. Like, I bet you can't get on top of the roof, come down that chimney, and come out on the other side. And he took the bet and went up there for some reason without his clothes. Maybe that was part of the bet. And they pushed up the breakfast bar so he couldn't get out, and he got stuck.
I could see where that could happen, but then you would have to believe that these friends, quote unquote friends, just decided to leave him there.
Right.
Knowing he was stuck, and then never came forward later to say, oh, we were playing around and he died. On October 2nd, after a 2-hour meeting, Al Bourne and Chuck Murphy ended with different opinions on what happened to Josh. Murphy believes he was murdered, perhaps forced into the chimney while he was still alive, or killed inside the cabin and then forced into the chimney. According to the Pikes Peak Courier, Bourne said, "We've come up with the most plausible explanation, and it will remain an accident. He did come down the chimney. That's our conclusion. We looked at photos, and we talked to Chuck Murphy about his memory of the chimney's construction, and we took everything into consideration. And we still have no evidence of a homicide. The furniture in front of the fireplace, we can't answer that question. It would have trapped him in the firebox, but there's no evidence he was ever in the firebox or went up the chimney." So I get everything that these individuals are saying. Bourne is saying we have no evidence of a homicide. I get that.
Right.
But to say that the most plausible explanation is that he climbed down the chimney almost naked and somehow his clothes were neatly folded up inside, that rings hollow to me. I don't think that's the most likely explanation. I think it's the one that fits we don't have evidence of anything else. But, when you're theorizing, to me, that is not the most plausible.
No. I mean, if you're going to theorize like that, I can theorize and say maybe he was at the cabin with a female friend, and maybe that female friend had a significant other that found out, showed up, and maybe Josh chose to hide in the firebox, and that person realized he was in there, pushed up the piece of furniture, and left. And he couldn't get out of the firebox, so all he could do is try to scramble up the chimney thinking he could get out that way and realize he couldn't.
Yeah, I don't see how that's any less plausible. You don't have evidence of either one.
Right.
So you could essentially come up with whatever theory you want because you have no evidence of any of it. The autopsy found no evidence of drugs in Josh's system, but the testing was difficult to complete because of how old his remains were. Josh's family said he didn't use drugs. Bourne stated that in order to consider Josh's death a crime, they would have to see evidence that Josh was somehow restrained or evidence of another person at the scene, such as footprints. And that I get. I understand all of that.
Sure. But how are you going to get footprints 7 years later?
After the place has been demolished.
Yeah. With all that traffic through all those years, you're not going to get that.
No. I would think any evidence that really would have been there, short of blood or something like that, when you kind of bulldoze the place over, you're destroying anything that would have been there, right?
How much is your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the chance to focus your time on what you do best. Don't waste your time mailing letters or shipping packages. Stamps is there to help. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. Get up to 89% off USPS, UPS, and other carriers, and schedule free package pickups all from one place. Stamps.com also makes it easy to track shipments, manage contacts, and report on how much you send and spend. Over the last 28 years, more than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Don't waste time worrying about being a postage expert or standing in line to drop off letters and packages. Let Stamps.com do what they do best so you can do what you do better. Go to Stamps.com/audio to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.
Now, we talked about this earlier, but at a certain point, tips started coming in that individuals had bragged about killing Josh Maddux. So, based on that information, police tried to develop some suspects. They couldn't positively determine if one suspect was in Woodland Park when Josh went missing. Another suspect was said to have been too small to have put Josh's body in the chimney alone. According to the Pikes Peak Courier, Bourne stated there's a lot of hearsay that this person was the last one to see him and that kind of thing, but they can't give me times and specifics. And we can't generate stuff that goes back 7 years. These theories could only make sense if it was multiple men involved. Bourne ended with, I know it's not a natural death, and I'm confident it's not suicide. My other options are an accidental death, homicide, and undetermined cause of death. So there's a couple of things that jump out at me. I'm still keep going back to this Bourne guy, and I get a lot of what he's saying. He doesn't have enough information to make a conclusive cause of death determination.
Right.
I understand that.
Sure.
The one part that I don't understand is that it says these theories could only make sense if it was multiple men involved. How could it not be possible that more than one person was involved? I get it. Somebody's calling in a tip about one person, but that doesn't mean they couldn't have been with somebody else.
Yeah, they could have brought a friend along, a buddy along, whatever, right?
Yeah, so I'm kind of struggling with that a little bit. The police did receive anonymous tips about other possible suspects when Josh went missing and when his remains were found. One suspect was incarcerated in Texas as of 2021 and had been in prison for violent crimes in Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. This man reportedly was seen with Josh.
So bad individual.
Yeah, he committed violent crimes.
Yeah.
He went to prison for them. In 2015, a Reddit user posted on Reddit and identified this suspect. The user said they went to high school with a guy named Andy who played guitar in a band. They weren't friends. After graduation, his friend Josh started hanging out with Andy and went missing soon after. Andy moved to New Mexico in May of 2009. He met a caretaker of a disabled person who invited him to their apartment. The caretaker left the room to take a shower. And when he got out of the shower, he found that his client had been stabbed to death and Andy was gone. Andy was eventually arrested. He claimed that he killed a woman in Taos and put her body in a barrel. And a woman's body was found in a barrel there, but somebody had already been arrested for this crime. So the police chose not to pursue charges against him in this case. The caretaker later died in a bar fight. So without him as a witness, the police didn't have much evidence against Andy, so they dropped the charges. Some people went to police and told them that Josh was last seen with this Andy before he went missing. According to this Reddit post, people called in tips about Andy saying he put Josh in a hole. The Reddit user wrote, despite a fair amount of pestering, nothing ever really came of it. And by nothing, I mean that the police mostly didn't even return our calls. And once accidentally canceled the bulletin on Josh because he's alive and well and living in the next town over. So this Reddit user's got a lot of information.
Sure does.
And obviously, depending on the veracity of the information, it sure doesn't make this Andy guy look good.
No.
The user linked an article identifying Andy as Andrew R. Newman. Andrew Newman was reportedly in Texas County in June 2009. In this article, it talked about him walking around to different Houston homes, asking for food and water. One person reported that he came home and found Newman in the house with his teenage children and said that he was acting strangely. Apparently, this man told Andrew that he would drive him to a different county, but he drove him to the sheriff's office. Police ran his fingerprints, which identified him. Andrew's fingerprints were left behind at the stabbing crime scene in May of 2009. His fingerprints were also left behind at a burglary crime scene in Seattle. So you said, okay, he's not a good guy. Right. I think that part has been proven. In March 2019, a Brazos County detention officer was headbutted in the eye by an inmate as they fell to the floor. This inmate was 30-year-old Andrew Richard Newman. He had been in jail since December 1st, 2018 on a burglary warrant from Florida. He was arrested in Texas after assaulting 3 officers. As of the time of the recording of this episode, Andrew Richard Newman has not been charged, nor has he been declared a suspect in relation to the death of Joshua Maddux. Josh's case status has not changed since 2015, and his death is still considered an accident. And I go back to the coroner, he listed off some of the options that he had. To me, accident doesn't seem right. What about cause of death undetermined?
Yeah.
You don't have evidence to say one way or the other. That seems to me maybe to be a better route to go.
It seems to fit with what we know so far.
Yeah, I think it does. Chuck Murphy told the Pikes Peak Courier, it's a real conundrum, a tragic, terrible story. All I know is he did not go down that chimney. Chuck believes that he got in the fireplace and went up, but he has no idea why, and said that it will remain a mystery. One of those sad stories. Kate Maddux was quoted in the Liberian News. This is certainly not the outcome that the Maddux family and my brother, Josh's many friends and loved ones were hoping for, given the strange circumstances. It may be a miracle that Josh has finally been found. And Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, it's considered closed because of the ruling that his death was an accident. But you've got, investigators, Josh's family, and the public who are left with more questions than answers. That's another reason why, maybe my thinking of cause of death undetermined, does that allow for the case to, I don't know if remain open is the right word, but maybe for somebody to keep working on it?
Maybe.
No one seems to know for sure who would want to hurt Joshua or why. We said it, right? His family had no reason to believe he was involved with drugs or any other type of illegal activity. And from my understanding, the police don't either. They haven't found any evidence of anything like that. So when you're asking questions, for me, question number one is it possible that Josh's death was truly an accident, right? Could he have somehow removed the wire mesh or gone into the chimney from the bottom up? I think to most people, just based on the position of his body, these things seem unlikely. Like you and I always say, I don't think you can take anything off the table. Can we conclusively say that it wasn't an accident? No. I'm still not crazy about the official ruling, though, being an accident, because I don't know what the factors are that would lead someone to believe more so than not this was an accident.
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing them.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm just having a hard time trying to figure out why his clothes were folded neatly. It just seems really strange for a suspect to take the time to fold somebody's clothes. But again, in some of the other podcast episodes we've done, killers have folded individuals' clothes, so it could happen.
Yeah, I get you. It would also be strange for him to fold his clothes neatly if he was in a life or death pressure situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even do it at home when I have no pressure on me whatsoever. I just, throw them here, there.
You don't even fold your clean clothes.
No.
Yeah.
No, I just throw them in a drawer somewhere. That's why, like, when people see me on the videos and Patreon, my shirts are always wrinkled.
They call you Mr. Wrinkle.
I'm Mr. Wrinkle.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the things we knew is that when we got to the end of this episode, there were going to be tons of questions.
Sure.
That were not only hard to answer, but almost unanswerable with the information available. But I think you have to look at the theory that someone killed Josh and put his body in the chimney. To me, there's no way that you can't keep that option on the table.
Oh, I agree with you.
Now, how it happened, who was involved, I don't know.
No.
What I will say is, based on some of this stuff about Andrew Newman, and again, a lot of it was from a Reddit user, but that Reddit user's post was in almost every article that we looked at.
Yeah.
It was used by a number of outlets. So because some of it has been proven true.
Yeah.
Which is why I believe they used it. I don't think there's any doubt the guy was a bad guy. I mean, I don't know if he's still in prison. I know he was in prison as of 2021, but if some of the things that people said are true, he was seen with Josh.
Yeah.
Right before he went missing. Obviously, he went on to do some pretty horrific things.
Sure. Some
we know he was held accountable for.
So could he had been involved? We don't know, but maybe.
Maybe. I go back to Al Bourne, the coroner, saying it most likely would have taken more than one person to do this, which I think, given the circumstances, is probably true.
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
Doesn't mean that one person couldn't have done it.
No, and it also doesn't mean that any of these individuals that have been looked at as suspects couldn't have had somebody else with them at some, at that point in time. I don't know what information is going to come out about this case in the future. Will we ever know exactly what happened to Joshua Maddux? I think it's doubtful unless somebody comes forward either with new information or corroborates some of the information that's floating out there.
Yeah.
It's going to take something like that. But to me, this is a very puzzling case, very mysterious, because of, the way he was found and some of the things that have come out about potential suspects or potential persons of interest.
I just don't think it's an accident, personally.
I don't either. And like I said, we can't conclusively say that it's not, but I'm finding it hard to understand how the coroner can conclusively say that it is.
Right.
That's been one of my biggest struggles. But that's it for our case on the death of Joshua Maddux. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, I want to hear those.
I just wanted to tell you something. You and Gibby remind me so much of my brother, me and my brother. I don't know many of the names of movies, but I know certain scenes out of movies, and he knows the names of, he knew, he's passed away now, but he knew the names of probably every movie that was ever made. So I would just give little tidbits, like sometimes it would be lines out of the movie, and he would say, "Oh, you mean just like you do every time?" Well, just about every time. You say, oh, you mean blah, 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 blah. And it just makes me smile and think about him every time that happens. I usually know a little bit more about the movie than the Gipster does, but I still love him. Thanks for the memories. Bye.
That's really cool. You know, it's amazing to me how, you know, something so kind of obscure like that, a banter you and I have about a movie or you not remembering and me trying to guess it can lead somebody back to a really good memory with their family member or something like that. Yeah. I just think it's awesome. I really do.
Hey, T-Cat, this is Patrick Brownson calling from Winooski, Vermont once again. I was just listening to the Beatrice 6 episode, and I heard Fergie talking about his wife's dreams of him cheating on her. And it reminded me, I went to see Jerry Seinfeld at the Beacon Theater in New York a couple years ago, and one of the best jokes was him talking about his wife dreaming of the same sort of things. And he said, she would say to him, "Oh, I dreamt all about it last night, so don't you dare try to deny it." So, Fergie, you're in good company, you and Jerry. All right, I just wanted to share that with you. Stay safe, keep your own time ticking. See you guys.
That's very similar to what my wife does. Now, I wish I was in Jerry's company as it pertains to his bank account.
Oh, yeah.
You know how I get into my searching through those clickbait slideshow things.
Right.
There was one about how much actors make on just the syndicated reruns.
Right.
And it was like the Friends people make like $20 million a year.
Right.
Jerry Seinfeld, it said, if this is true, makes $115 million a year just off the reruns of Seinfeld.
I believe it. I think he bought the rights to the show or something.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Him and Larry David. I mean, the guy's worth, I think, like $1 billion. Yeah.
So I'd like to be in that neighborhood. I don't think I ever will. Right now, I'm in the low rent district. I'd like to be in the Jerry Seinfeld neighborhood.
I'd still have coffee with him.
In cars?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. My name is Melody. I'm from Kentucky. I'm actually going between your two podcasts and listening to them every other episode on every other podcast. But right now, I'm on True Crime all the time on episode 217. And Gibby had said that he wanted to do death by guillotine. But a fun fact for you is that sometimes the guillotine would get stuck halfway through the bone in the neck, and they would actually have to pull it back up and go back down to finish the job. So I don't know if that would be the best way to go, but I love you guys. You guys are amazing. I love listening to your podcast. And thank you guys for what you do.
Well, I would want the
sharp
one. I'm like, hey, who sharpened this?
The one from Sharper Image?
Yeah.
Get that guillotine?
Exactly.
I don't know why you would pick guillotine. You have a neck like a 400-year-old redwood tree. So, I mean, that doesn't seem like a good idea. I have like a little scrawny neck. You got like a big Paul Bunyan neck. Yeah, you need to rethink that, man.
Yeah.
But we appreciate you calling in. All right, buddy, that's it. We'll go off on the Paul Bunyan thing and your tree trunk neck. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All month long, the biggest movies are streaming free on Pluto TV's Popcorn Summer Movies. Watch star-studded blockbusters like Titanic and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, or fall in love with charming rom-coms like Hitch and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. The best part? Pluto TV is 100% free. No credit cards, not even a sign-up. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies, TV shows, and more. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.